Hello, my name is David Herbert. I'm Principal Timpani of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. This is the latest video in 100 Music Lessons, which is a series of educational videos meant for percussionists, timpanists, of course, but all musicians, all music lovers, even conductors, even music critics. There's something in this video for everybody because it deals with the compositional languages of different composers in different eras of the music that we play for you. This video was filmed in Seoul, South Korea in October of 2020 for the Percussive Art Society International Convention. They asked me to do a clinic, which was a huge honor for me. We had the help of Scott Verduin, the Seoul Philharmonic. We had limited time. It was done all in one take, and I really hope you enjoy this video. Thank you. Hello, I'm David Herbert, Principal Timpani of the Chicago Symphony, and
I'm Scott Verduin, Assistant Principal Percussionist and Assistant Timpanist with the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra.
great. Thank you so much, Scott, for having me as a guest again, and it's a very sincere honor and pleasure to see you again. We've known each other for many years now, and recently we played Mahler First Symphony together. That was a total blast. Mm-hmm. And now we're playing the Shostakovich Symphony. Yeah. And I thought we should do a class together for PASIC 2020. And the title of our class is Simplicity and Success, right? Success through simplicity. And also, since we're in a situation right now worldwide where we don't always have access to instruments, another good title of this class should be How to Practice Without Practicing. And we're going to do some score studying together, and I'm going to go through my thought process and how I can sort of mentally prepare and imagine the music before I actually try to play it. So we're a little bit rusty and the drums are backwards for me, but we're going to do the best we can. So this week we're playing Shostakovich Symphony Number 1.
Yes. And
in case you don't know about this piece, it has this point in the fourth movement where the orchestra suddenly stops. It's going pretty ya dee da dee, right? And then wham, and then it's a fermata. So I will show you on the score here. So here's what I'm talking about: this big cutoff right here. And then look at this little fermata right here on the bar line. So big cutoff, and then it says, what I'm looking at here, it says adagio and this solo part. So at no place on here does it say cadenza or anything like that. And what's really important about this rhythm and this motive, it's one of the first times where the motive actually goes in retrograde. So in the third movement, it's dun da da dun 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 dun. Da 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 dun 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 da da da. So when we have this rhythm, you have this dun da da dun dun dun. And then what's important here is adagio, and then come over here. You see this largo. So adagio is going to be faster than largo. So two things are really important about this. Don't screw around. Don't mess around with the rhythm. Dun da da dun dun dun. Right? And then dun da da da. You have fortissimo, fortissimo, then fortissimo, then pianissimo. And then I'm going to guide us to the largo just a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit of time right here. Something like that. And the stick choice for this, I'm going to use my sixes. And take a look at this, Scott. See how tight that wrap is? Now, see, if I can squeeze this and it makes any kind of wrinkle, that's not tight enough. So these are pretty good. And the reason I want to use sticks like this is because I'm not so concerned about the louder part. Mm-hmm. I'm actually concerned about this guy right here, the pianissimo. I want it to be very, very clear. Mm-hmm. So if the sticks are too poofy, or I won't be able to play a true pianissimo, mm-hmm. and it would be just kind of indistinct. It won't be clear mm-hmm. enough. And then a lot of people, when I coach, people coach with me, they get really caught up in this word right here, this coperti. And I don't know if you notice what I've been doing in the rehearsals, but I do not use coperti. Do you happen to know what I'm doing?
Yeah, instead of actually putting muffles on the drum, you're just changing your beating spot.
Right.
You're moving a little farther in?
Exactly. I'm playing way further into the head. Mm-hmm. And this is really important for me because I can control the sound. Mm-hmm. So coperti means kind of covered. It doesn't mean actually take mutes and put them on it doesn't necessarily mean that. It means just a kind of covered, dampened type of sound. So I'm able to manipulate the sound that way without using cloth or dampers or anything like that. What can happen is if you use the cloths like that, sometimes you can overdo it and the instrument sounds totally dead. Mm-hmm. This way I can get some life out of the instrument and get the desired effect. And then this largo is right, so this adagio's got to move faster than people think, mm-hmm. usually. Usually I hear this too slow, and that doesn't make any sense for this. So let's give it am I forgetting anything between the sticks and?
I think you're pretty spot on. Maybe the only thing I would add is having a clear idea of what this adagio tempo should be. So I think like you said, of course it needs to be faster than the largo.
That's a great point.
But I think maybe looking through the score before and after can really help you with how that rhythm and the tempo, how it's interpreted.
Right. If I know this melodic line at the largo, mm-hmm. and I'm able to sing it. So this gives me a more assertive tempo at the adagio. It's this kind of flowing tempo, adagio, flowing, right? So dum da da dum bum bum, right? So let's give it a try.
Sure.
Should we try?
Yeah.
Gonna duck for cover.
I'll duck for cover.
And I'm not gonna play so super loud because we're recording it and we don't want the spike. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we'll try to make it sound halfway decent. But this is my approach to this. It's how I'm practicing. Even if I didn't have the instruments, which we didn't have before we arrived, I'm just looking through the score, choosing my tempi, making my stick choices, imagining the sounds that I want to make beforehand, and then making those decisions. And then, of course, you get to rehearsal, and the conductor won't change everything anyway. But it's really good to have a plan of action, and to know that this motive, dun da da dun, do not mess with this rhythm. It's never changed. Every time it'll be dun da da dun 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 da da da. And sometimes when people coach with me, they go, bum, da-da-da, bum. Oh, and the other thing, make sure you get a really clean start to this roll. Sometimes I hear dun, da, da, dun, dun, just really assertive and one initiation to the stroke to the roll, I think. A lot of times composers will write a tremolo and they just want a sustained sound. So there shouldn't be and if you were playing any other instrument, you wouldn't change the tongue. You would just do, so do, 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 re, mi, or just ta, 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 not ta, like that.
Yeah, the articulation doesn't change.
The articulation doesn't change, so it's just a sustained, the tremolo on timpani and percussion is just a sustained lengthening of just a normal old note. That's right there.
Yeah.
So let's give it a try and see how it sounds.
Great.
Now here comes. So something like that. One thing for sure, keep in mind on string player tuning, this is not keyboard tuning. We want the minor third to be on the low side. So nice, sad minor third. Typically, my background is on piano, and typically percussion is fixed intonation. On timpani, we want to use more of the string player intonation, so that's going to be minor thirds on the lower side, major thirds on the wide side. We rarely have major sevenths, but those would be extremely wide for string playing. And the other thing I'm doing is I put a low F on here, just to pick up a little bit more sound. It's sort of a resonator, like a resonator bar on a marimba, just to give me a little bit more life on the C itself. And then I'm putting the E flat here, even though there's a D, it's a little bit smaller drum passing tone, and just have it over here. And one thing I want to make sure is not to shy away from the D too much. It might sound kind of strange on top of the instrument, but from a distance it should balance out. So we're back. That was the Shostakovich Symphony No. 1, hopefully. And now we're going to take a radical turn backwards towards Mozart. And I have to tell you, if Mozart's on your audition, you're going to play some Mozart. So it's a really good opportunity to make sure we know what's going on. First thing we need to look at is what you were saying, the cut time through your.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got to make sure you know this music and how it goes, of course, when playing any excerpt. I think my first time playing this it might have been in my freshman year of college, I think. It was very early on. I didn't know it would be in 8. I just assumed, it'll be in 4. So I took it twice the speed, and the rest of the orchestra, of course, did how it was played. So it was not a very good start.
But you get to go home early, at least.
Yeah,
right?
That's the good point.
And the other thing is, check this out. There's, in this score, we have transpositioning timpani, right? So, so it's in the bass clef. It says C and G, of course. But with Mozart and sometimes Haydn, we need to make sure that we look at this E, the E flat, and so we transpose this up to. So we have basically Johnny 2 notes, right? Tonic and dominant. So here's our tonic, here's our dominant, E flat, and then B flat. And then what you were saying about tempo is really critical, because how do you choose the tempo? So that's let's go to the ensuing allegro. Ready? So what we did is we took the dotted half note from the ensuing allegro and we applied it and make some sort of connection between the allegro and this opening adagio, which is very typical in this era of music. The late Haydn, the late Mozart, the early Beethoven, they have this kind of introductory, thematic music. But the DNA of the music is somehow connected, so it's not arbitrary. So it can't be just like da da da, and then like this. It doesn't make sense. So there has to be some sort of connectivity. So that's how basically we arrive at a tempo. And also we don't want to take something that's too fast. That this cannot be played. These notes. So down da da down 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 down. Make sure that, because if you go down, da da down, 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 that's not
too fast for a violinist.
Well, they can do it certainly, but it's not the Feierlich, right? It's not the stately introduction that we want. It doesn't have the grandness of it. Now, when we think of Mozart, we think very elegant, right? We want a thing, nothing bombastic, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to make stick choices that are according to that. And then, again, what I'm mainly concerned is this pianissimo roll. I just want it to sound kind of smooth, and especially when you're playing alone at an audition. So this bum bum, and you just have all this things going on, and you just want to be a nice just carpet. And it's a real chance to play, even though it's marked piano. We only have piano and forte and Mozart. It's a real chance to show off your pianissimo playing. And then the other thing we need to look at in here is this. It is in cut time, as you said before, but what that means basically is the inflection is going to be on 1 and 3 and 1. So down, da da down, 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 down. And then the other thing we need to look at is right here. A lot of people get goofed up and they let this note ring all the way to beat 3 or sort of indefinitely. Don't do that. You're going to have people, especially wind and brass players on your committee, that see this echo. This is an echo, and see the winds all have echo on beat 2. So you have risk to reward, risk to reward ratio, right? So the risk is to let it ring, you get no reward. Mm-hmm. There's no risk to play a quarter note actually as written, and much reward because you have sensitive woodwind players that, well, I really appreciate that. Nobody's going to say, well, I really like that candidate, the way he let that quarter note ring for a half note. Mm-hmm. That just doesn't happen. I've sat on many timpani auditions, and I can assure you that doesn't happen. So we down, 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 off, and then let them play. And then one more thing we have to think about is the balance. So we have this in forte on the E flat, and then we have the next entrances on the B flat, a little bit lower, right? So we have to adjust the balance. So I'm going to give a little bit more energy on the B flat as opposed to the E flat. And then what does the forte mean in Mozart? We talked about the elegance of Mozart, right? Mm-hmm. So one thing that I do when I'm trying to establish the dynamic, the forte dynamic, is I don't focus on soft or loud. I'm only focusing on the beauty of the sound. So I just play the first note, and I'm only thinking about trying to play the most beautiful sound I can possibly play. And whatever that sound is, that's going to be my dynamic for the whole passage. That's going to be my litmus. That's mm-hmm. sort of the guideline. Mm-hmm. It's instead of loud or soft, I'm thinking about the generosity of the sound and the beauty of the sound. One more thing I would like to point out is we have some harmony changes here. So you have this first on the B flat. And every time, this is going to be a kind of common denominator topic of this class today, is that anytime things are repeated, we want to give a little bit more, especially when there's a harmony change. So you have C, 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 C. And then this harmony change, it gets a little bit more intense, right? Mm-hmm. And then, all I'm going to do is I'm going to move the sticks in about that far in towards the center. So I'm going to be a little bit on the, not quite on the edge, but everything just nice and bright, elegant, not too deep, not too heavy with the sound, and especially on the first B flat. And then you'll notice on the second B flat instruments are going to move in about that much, just a slight color change. So in Mozart, it's like the end of the sculpture, the marble sculpture, the chiseling marks, the delineations of the eyebrow, everything, it just ever so slight. If you overdo it, it just ruins it. That's what makes Mozart so difficult, and why other musicians really geek out on Mozart. They just so if it's on your list, you're going to play some Mozart. The same thing happens here after this long roll. We have these repeated rhythm, bum 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 bum, and then a harmony change and added winds. And then same thing, I'm going to start the first bar and then I'm going to move in. And then the other thing you're going to see me do is I'm going to take a little bit of time at the end of phrases, dun 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 dun, and always you're going to hear 1 and 3 and 1 are going to be
always that cut time feel.
Always that cut time feel. And then you're going to see again at the dun 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 dun, ever so slightly, just a little bit of time. We're going to finish our phrases. We're not going to play flat like robots, because it's nobody gets inspired by listening to somebody that's playing exactly flat. So we're going to do just a little bit working with the time, a little bit working with the color, focusing on the beauty of the sound and the elegance of the sound, hopefully. Even on timpani, maybe it's possible. Should we give it a try?
Yeah.
Oh, for the sticks, yeah. So for the sticks, I'm using 2s with a German felt covering. Again, I want something that's nice and light and bright. These are the same weight as any typical bamboo stick from Germany or Berlin, maybe 1 or 2 grams heavier. But the stitching is very, very tight, so everything's very clean. I don't want any stick noise at all. I just only want instrument noise. Instruments should sound like bells, very beautiful, and then it gives me just enough cushion to get through the rolls. Even if I've had 5 cups of coffee, I can still hopefully play that long roll. So I'm going to condense the rest. I'm going to condense the rolls just for time's sake, and we'll give it a try.
Yep.
All right. When we play 2 drum excerpts, it's really helpful for the intonation to shut the instruments off that we're not playing. So all I do is have some mutes here, and I just put it right sort of adjacent to the drum. So that way there's no bleed through of the sound. So our intonation is going to be a little bit, hopefully better, a little cleaner. And also I use this all the time, even when I'm playing with the orchestra. The drums that I'm not playing, I just shut them off. It really helps with the intonation. So. Well, that was fun. A little Mozart, right?
Always nice.
And I have to tell you, on top of the instruments, of playing that roll, and there's that B flat, and it sounded just terrible. But you said it sounded okay. You're not just
Yeah, I
being
think
nice.
it's one of the phenomenons of timpani is especially the lower drums, I don't think you really have to worry about such a fast roll speed, but once you get a couple feet in front, it really clears up and smooths out.
Next up is the Beethoven 9, the first movement, the coda from Beethoven 9. So this is really fascinating. If you count exactly all the bars, da-da, 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 da-ya, ya, da-da-da, ding, dun, 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 dun. It's about 35 or 34 bars or something like that. I forget. And if you go to the very beginning of the piece, here's the dum dum bum bee bum ba dee bum dee that's the exact same amount of bars. Isn't that cool? So he sort of bookends the beginning of the symphony and then the coda. And then Brahms sort of does the same thing in the Brahms Symphony Number 1 with the note dum 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 dum. It's 52.
Yeah.
The G is 52. And if you go to the coda, the first movement, dun 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 dun, and you have this hairpin, and then the last note is 52. So there's a lot. So these
Are these composer jokes, or?
no, they're not. They're just sort of inspired by each other. And then there's a lot of elements of even Rossini and Beethoven. They have a lot of inspiration that goes from one generation to the next. They pick up, and it's music of the spheres and all this sort of math and science and numbers and magic numbers. 52 is a magic number for the. But this is really fascinating how the beginning of the Ninth Symphony and the coda are exactly the same. They bookend perfectly. So the very opening statement of the entire symphony and the coda are exactly the same amount of bars. So why am I saying this? Because we need to get from here. This is the beginning of this coda passage, all the way to here. And what's happening is it gets loud, right? So it's kind of crescendo, crescendo, crescendo. And then you have this at rehearsal letter S, right? This is before Beethoven. He didn't write the letter S in there. He's just writing the music. He doesn't care know anything about letter S. But so we have an arrival point of fortissimo, but we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 bars to go. So we have this fatalistic crescendo, and it's just one direction. Dun, 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 dun. Da, 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 ding, dun, dum, that ends dum, dum, right? And we need one crescendo without any kind of flow. It's just, otherwise we don't get this sense of the fate. It's unavoidable what's going to happen. And we need to have this sense. So you have to draw this attention. And the worst thing you can do is just have this kind of situation where you're coming and going with the sound, especially the timpani. And I hear very often, yada, ba-dum, ba-dum, and this tremolo. Don't do that. So we have this tremolo here. There's nothing going on. Usually what you want to reduce in a tremolo is if there's some other moving line. But the music goes, yada, ba-dum, ba-dum, digga-dum, right? Dun, 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 ding. So we don't want to do any scoop-de-loop-de, whatever you call them, loop-de-loops.
Nothing funny during
nothing,
the
just yada, sustain and power through that roll. And then we have to, what's it called when you have to, pacing. You have to pacing. So one thing that I can do here is as I'm building up this crescendo in here, I'm going to start leaning on the dominant, bam, ba-da-da-da, bam, ba-da-da-da, bam, ba-da-da-da, and I'm going to take a little bit of time here to set this up, bam, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, then right back into tempo. And this gives me a chance to establish the fortissimo with still 17 bars left to go. Then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up. So it's similar to if you were playing that on the piano, you wouldn't, you wouldn't allow the notes to bleed over. At a certain point, maybe right in here, it really doesn't matter acoustically. But at the very beginning, we want nice and clean notes. But it's also like string players, the violins, when they play one note and then they play the next note, the previous note stops. So we want to take that also to the timpani. It's a little bit extra work, but in the softer dynamics, it really helps. And then I have to shout out to Tim Jennis right here. Ba-dum, ba. He gives a little comma over there to establish the second phrase. So thank you, Tim Jennis, and yeah, that's about it. What I'm going to try to do, Scott, is I'm going to try to play everything as one crescendo. It's very difficult to do. I doubt I can do it, but that's what I'm going to try just for funsies today. So so basically, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to start a little bit less, and then I'm going to make sure that my pacing is. And again, instead of thinking about soft or loud, I'm going to think more about the generosity of the sound, especially when I arrive at letter S, because as I said, we have 17 bars left to go, and I don't want to be too loud at that point. So I'm going to be thinking about the sound spinning out into the room, more sound, more sound, more sound. Nothing about loud or soft. Does that make sense?
Of course.
All right. Any questions for me?
I think you hit the nail on the head with the word pacing.
Yeah,
I think that kind of course, besides sound characteristics, I think pacing really describes what needs to happen during this coda.
Yeah, if you're too loud at letter S, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're just going to be, and also we need to think about the style of the music. This is sort of like an extenuation of Mozart. As a matter of fact, I'm going to use the same sticks that I use in the Mozart. You use them in a little bit different way, a little bit more muscular, sort of like Mozart on steroids a little bit, almost. But it's a more assertive, but it's still in that realm of the classical music. So we're going to also, with the tempo choice in classical music, we need to have momentum. Momentum is a key element of classical music. Things need to move on. Can't be too squared down, and we don't get into that until Brahms, and then Wagner and maybe Strauss and things like that, where things can start pulling back. We need, in the classical era, to keep things moving. So I'm going to choose a tempo that's a little bit brisk. And I think that'll also help me with the pacing. Because if I'm too slow, it gets too ponderous, too pedantic.
Yeah, when you're too slow, it can get heavy as well.
Heavy, yeah, we want to avoid that in classical music, this heavy sense. So we have to capture the spirit and the compositional language of Beethoven. It's all about momentum. Don't play too loud. Nothing ugly, hopefully. We'll see about that. And yeah, it's just an extenuation of the elegance. Well, often we see Beethoven as like a bust of him, like a porcelain on the piano, and he's like that. He looks, so we have this kind of image of Beethoven. Man, he was not a very pleasant person, I have read, but his music is very elegant, and very much in the spirit of the continuation of Haydn and Mozart. So we want to capture that side of the Beethoven and not the scowling side. So we'll give it a shot. Wish us luck, and we'll see you in a minute. And we're ready to start on the next passage, which is going to be the coda, the very end of, and the build-up to the coda, very critically, of Brahms Symphony No. 1. And Scott mentioned something about tuning after we just finished this Beethoven passage. And can you clarify what...
Yeah, I mean, for me as a young player, and I think a lot of players these days are always trying to improve and work on their ear training. So I asked you, what do you do for ear training? And what things can you do from the score or with other things to help improve in general?
It's a great question. The intonation, especially when you have just tonic and dominant, they're immovable. So we talked about the minor thirds being on the low side, major thirds being on the wide side, on the brighter side.
Mm-hmm.
When you have D and A, so you have, basically what I'm doing is I'm focusing on the tonic, the re, and the la belongs to the re.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm singing out a lot when I'm just in daily life, and especially when I'm tuning. So I find that if you can sing the re and sing the la without the Elmer Fudd voice, if you can sing the la and sing the re, that you have a better chance of tuning the instruments. And then, so what I mentioned is in the D minor, right? Is it the D minor or D major, doesn't matter. That your ground zero, the foundation is the D, and then the A belongs to the D. So many people, they tune the A first, right? And then they tune the D. That just doesn't work so well. So just focus on how the keys actually evolve. So in the next one we have Do. I'm going to tune the C first, and then the Sol belongs to the Do.
Mm-hmm.
So does that answer?
Yeah, so always start with the tonic when you're tuning, never the dominant first.
I find that's helpful, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
So far. And yeah, I think it's really critical to think in the keys that you're at. It gives a clear definition of the intonation in general. So instead of tuning individual notes, and it's more cohesive, I guess, in that way. And also when I'm, for instance, in the burlesque, I'm actually tuning in the notes that they, or for instance, the symphonic metamorphosis, the Hindemith, I would tune Do, Si, Sol, Mi. I would sing, and Fa, Re, Do, La, La.
Mm-hmm.
Fa, Re, Do, La. That La, so, and I go 3 blind mice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Fa, Re, Do, La. That La is higher than the actual A that you started with.
Mm-hmm.
So I get my A, right? I go 3 blind mice, Fa, Re, Do, La. It's because if you tune the A first, it's going to sound like this: Fa, Re, Do, La,
Mm-hmm.
La. That's not going to work.
Yeah. Tune with the melody.
Yeah, it's melodic tuning and in the keys. So that's a really great question. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Yep.
So on to the Brahms. We have a transition here from this. So many people get overthink this. And we're talking about simplicity, right?
Mm-hmm.
They overthink these sforzandi in these roles here. All we need is some sort of accent in the middle of this hairpin.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the realm of piano, so this sforzando is not arbitrary. It's actually going to be in mezzo piano.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it works. If you're in Composition 101, you're taking any composition course, and you write a hairpin that's just one dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So this sforzando it's not arbitrary. It's not just brutale, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just in the mezzo piano. But we have 3 of them in a row, so each one is going to
A little more.
a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
So I talk to you, and then I say it again, and I say it again, and I say, and each time a little bit more. And then we have, here I'm going to cheat. So on the back side of this third one, I'm going to come down to pianissimo, because the crescendo is printed right away. And we have 2 bars where the tempo does not change, and then on the third bar, we start this stringendo. And we have to get to the coda, which starts here. And we have 2 things going on. So we have crescendo and stringendo. So, bum, 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 but, and this all has to arrive here. Now look at this. We have fortissimo, fortissimo, fortissimo. This is not marked here. It's not, yeah. So we need a only single forte here, but we're going to need to be a little bit more assertive.
Mm-hmm.
We have a long crescendo. We do need to pace it out again. Basically, we just don't want to be too loud. We want to be in a supportive role. supportive mode. One thing about these hairpin, I often hear the backside being neglected. So in Brahms, it's very important. I'm going to be playing further into the instrument, so I'm going to be looking for a thicker, more velvety, luxurious sound than the Mozart and the Beethoven. So we're starting to depart away and getting more cushion to the sound, more roundness, more grandeur to the sound, more thickness, a little bit more weight. We can do a little bit more things with time, for instance, especially on the backside of the beat, to create a little bit more sense of weight here and there, not all the times. So we have this, we have the crescendo starting, and then when I'm listening to auditions, so we ba, and then I'm being stagnant here with the time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, and 6, and 10, and ding dun ding dun ding dun 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 dun. And everything in music, especially stringendi and crescendi, they're all in sort of this organic way. So it's not a math problem where we're going to go faster like this. It's sudden, it's very slowly spinning like a little cyclone, and then it gets faster and faster at the very end, at the centrifuge, right? And also, like if you think of crescendi like a flower blooming, like where one crescendo sort of flower goes like this, and then it blooms like that. So we wait, and then it opens up again. So a lot of things happen towards the end of stringendi and crescendi. So we have to show that. And when I'm listening, I'm keeping track of the time in the rolls. This is going to happen again in the Tchaikovsky. We have a little bit of stringendo problem there. Even though there's no rhythmic stuff going on, I'm sort of keeping track of where I think the pacing should go, especially the rhythmic pacing. And if I'm listening to somebody, they don't have to be exactly with me. Nobody's a mind reader. But these notes here, bum, 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 they need to be within 5 or 6 seconds of where I'm at. If I'm waiting for a long time or it's way too short, then I know that they haven't given any thought to what's happening in the music, and I can't imagine with the ensemble, and so that can be a little bit of a problem. Take a look at these. We have many more notations now. So we have these kind of wedge marks. Look at that. This is very like a heavier side, right? And then look at these. You have dots. Everybody's got dots. Look at all the dots. Dot, 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 dot. Imagine if there was no dots. We could phrase this, right? Dun da da dun da da dun da, because it's in cut time, right? Dun da da dun da da. But because there's dots on each and every note, that sort of individualizes every note. So we have da 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 da. It monosyllabic. So you pick a consonant, pick a vowel. I'm going to pick a T. Pick a vowel.
Good vowel, O.
Yeah, toe. So there's no inflection. So the dots don't necessarily mean short. It's like an effervescence of the music. It's a liveliness and is individualistic of each note. So that there's no pulsation or inflection. Every note gets the same ictus. Every note gets the same sort of emphasis, right, on the wrong syllable. And then we have dun 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 dun. I'm subdividing like crazy in here because a lot of people I hear slow this down. Dun 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 dun. This is momentum stuff. This is the side of Brahms that's very da dee da da dee da forever. Marinas, Pereira. Marinas, Pereira. Right? So we have all this fun stuff going on here. Again, nothing that we've played so far has been ponderous or brutal or aggressive. And we're still in the spirit. We're going from Beethoven now to Brahms. It's still beautiful sounds all the time. Never an ugly sound in Brahms. And Brahms is another composer that musicians, besides us timpanists, right? Other musicians really geek out about, because there's a specific Brahms sound. That's what I was talking about before. There's a velvety sound to it, it's sort of a luxurious sound. Like that nice sofa that just perfectly forms to your body when you sit down. You know you're home, and you're like, oh yeah, and then you watch TV, have a beer. Beer would be good for Brahms, I think. Yeah. And then so we have these repeated. Here's some more dots, right? Dun 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 dun, dun. Really nice to set up this chorale right here with a little bit of time here. Dun, dun, dun. And now, here we have the marinas, marinas, and then oftentimes what I hear in Brahms is it's very typical, it's kind of the hemiola king, right? So we don't want to telegraph da-la-la-la, da-la-la, da-la-la, because we have this pull and push, pull and push. We have this da-hee-da, 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 da-da, 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 and then here, Marinus is going to ride his bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
Ride your great big bicycle, right? And we have three of them in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Ride your great big bicycle. Ride Marinus, 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 bicycle. And check this out. Wedge, like deep,
Mm-hmm.
deep, deep, and short. Another little dot. We need to show that. So I'm going to let these notes ring just a little bit more. Try to play with a little bit more weight. And I'm going to put some life, like a little champagne pop on that note. Be careful. Sometimes when you play short notes, they can sound suddenly loud. So you want just a lighter inflection. The dot inflection is lighter than the wedge inflection, just in general. Now here we have some more things by the composer. This is very typical in Brahms, Schumann, Schubert, even Strauss, even Mahler. Typically when you have these sustained notes with sforzando, that means reduce. We have other things going on, sure enough, dun da da dun da da dee, dun da da da, bum, 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 and we have this kind of arpeggio pattern in the basses. So we want to hit it and get out of it, ba dum, ba, and maybe quasi crescendo here just a little bit to get right here. And now don't screw around with the time here until this note right here. So we bump, 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 bump. Yeah, right? And then nice and big and full. And now take a look at this, Scott. Do you see any accent at the end of that roll?
No.
Don't do that. So anybody else have like the trumpet players, or can you imagine the flute? Tweet, tweet.
No stingers, yeah.
Yeah, no stingers. So you have to have an exit plan. So for me, I just count. I count to 8. Mm-hmm. So I have to have some sort of plan. Otherwise, I'm not in the moment. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I just sort of finish, hopefully without any kind of stinger or accent. Let's get rid of the stinger. No more stingers. Okay. But the conductor can ask for one.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. You just got to do whatever the conductor wants. But as far as like an audition, I would be really turned off if somebody came in at the end of a Brahms Symphony No. 1 and just bang, whack. Like, I'd start, I don't know. Maybe I would cry or something like that. So the sticks, I'm going to try to get through this just without changing any sticks. These are my 4s, so they're a little bit, again, just a little bit bigger representation of what I've been using before, which were the 2s, so just a little bit heavier, a little bit more mass on the business end of the stick, and we'll see how it goes. So hopefully I can get these things going. But I love this. I love how the beginning, right? You have 3, and each one is just a little bit more. I'm going to try to do that. And when I get to this da da dee da da, and then we have 3 of those. So each time I'm going to try to do a little bit more on those as well. And then with the reduction here in the sforzandi rolls, I set myself up for a nice big epic. Hopefully, I'm rusty. I haven't played in about 6 or 7 months, but it'll set me up for a nicer moment at the very end, so that we have a good sense of finality and conclusion to the passage. I hope. We'll see how it goes. All right. Well, that was the best I could do on the Brahms, and that's a fun one to play. But it's a lot of detail in that one, and a lot of different inflections, articulations, trying to bring out. I tried to play everything just with the one pair of sticks. Sometimes during the chorale, I'll just pick up one big poof ball, and boom, for those two notes, just to give more sound. Just for today, I didn't do that. But what you want to avoid in auditions is these moments when you're changing sticks that it sounds like somebody's creating like in some sort of construction zone. So you don't want a bunch of stick noise. So I tend to, again, or at least I preach and I teach the risk versus reward. Like, you don't have to change sticks for every single passage. Just do it with your hands, and that way you avoid a bunch of stuff that you're focused more on the music, and instead of which stick am I going to use, and that kind of thing. It can be distracting.
Can I bring up, you just said do it with your hands. I saw in the Brahms you were changing your beating spot, your position just a little bit. Can you talk about the reasoning behind it and how that changes the sound overall, or how it determines what sound you're looking for in general?
Sure. In the Brahms, I'm very much a little bit further in than I was in the Mozart and Beethoven, for certain. So I'm looking for deeper sounds, a little bit more honesty to the pitch. Very often I see people are playing too close to the rim. The sound gets diffuse. The pitch gets less honest, and not as deep. Sort of that analogy about that nice sofa cushion that we were using, come home. That luxurious sound is a little bit further in. So in general, on the Brahms and anything after Beethoven, I'm manipulating the sound a little bit further into the instrument so that the sound is not too strident. Is that it?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Even at the very beginning, typically what we were talking about before with the rolls sounding better from a distance, it's easy to play near the edge. It's easier to play rolls but the sound quality is not as good. And that is as soon as you start playing Brahms, there should be a light switch going on with anybody that's listening to you. That sounds like Brahms. If it's insipid, if it's thin, wispy, that's more, that could be like Ravel or something like that, or Debussy or something like, you can use those effects, but you need the meat and potatoes of the instrument, the deep resonant sound for Brahms. So we're immediately going for that sound, avoiding the edge pretty much at all costs, pretty much for any of the notes, and exploring that area of the instrument that's going to give a little bit more luxurious sound, hopefully. So next we have the Tchaikovsky 4, a little famous passage here, right?
Yeah, of course.
And one thing I like to think, when I'm away from the instruments as I'm studying the scores, I like to think about what the composers really are famous for. So, for instance, Tchaikovsky is really famous for ballet music. So everything is kind of, again, elegance, right? And it has a lot of momentum, again, because of the dance stuff and ballet music in general. Maybe it's a Russian quality to it.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up the difference between the Germanic background of Brahms versus
Yeah,
Tchaikovsky being Russian.
There's a macho thing going on with Tchaikovsky sometimes. And it's also it can be very elegant. But similar to Brahms, Tchaikovsky also does these very interesting things with the rhythms. Like, for instance, in the first piano concerto, and it's on but it's not right? And then this one is yum bum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba dum, but it's not da ba da ba da ba da da ba da. So where's the beat? Very similar to that passage in the Marinas passage. Marinas, Pereira.
Yeah.
So we have this situation in the Tchaikovsky. So we have, and again we have another stringendo crescendo thing going on. So tell me what you want to hear, Scott. You want to hear 2 bars before T, or would you like to hear 4 bars before T? And I'll just sing it, so we're
I-
practicing away from the
I
instrument.
like 4 bars.
You want 4 bars before T? Here it goes. Fa, do, fa, fa, do, fa, fa, do, fa, fa, do, fa, fa, yappa, papa, papa. So see how I do that? I'm using the stringendo. And did you notice how I'm going fa, do, fa, fa? There's a little bit of inertia on the upbeat, the downbeat, just to give a little bit.
Yeah,
of,
I think that makes the stringendo really effective too.
I think so. Yeah. Now should we sing 2 bars before T?
Sure.
Because when you give me 4 bars, that's easier.
Sure, try 2.
Okay, here we go. So, fa, do, fa, fa, do, fa, fa. So, depending on if it's 4 bars, you can be a little sneakier with that stringendo. If they only give you 2 bars, you have to be more obvious with it, because you have to show that stringendo is happening, and then that sets you up again when I'm listening to somebody else playing. Whatever tempo they give me, I just continue that stringendo right through the tremolo, and I expect the bum 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 to be within 2 or 3 seconds. It doesn't have to be exact, but I just want a sense that this person, the candidate or the musician understands that the stringendo continues, and then we get to the allegro con anima. Then we're locked in. Now the crescendo continues, and this is really critical here. Look, check this out. Where's the payoff is on for us, it's on the A. And here's that kicker where we don't know where the beat is, because this sets up the whole, where's the beat? Where's the beat? Here's the beat, here's the beat. No. Here's the beat. Where's the beat? So we have to really, what we were talking about before in the Brahms, bum, 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 bum. Again, crescendo and stringendo happens most of it happens the stringendo ends here. I take that back. And then the crescendo is mainly going to happen right here. Ba, 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 la. And because of the tessitura of the instruments, I'm going to be playing on the bigger instruments. So this F is facing out towards the camera, right? And it's a very high note. And the C, also very high note for this instrument. And the A is lower note, and it's pointed in that direction. So I have to pace this out, pacing, right? Ba, 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 la. And get that A to pay off on the fortissimo. Especially you'll notice that bam, ba-da, 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 ba-da. So again, we're finishing off everything. Here it is on that bam, ba-da, 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 ba-da. So this way, when you're playing your auditions, or if you're playing for somebody else, you always have a sense of arrival and finality. If it's ba, it's a do, ba, 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 ba. So we're going to try to...
Yeah, is it over? I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to try to infuse it just enough where it inspires the listeners. It's like, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. I like that candidate, hopefully.
Yeah, so even though it is all fortissimo, you're finding some moments for some miniature phrasing to insert.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, and I'm really lightening up on the F. You're going to really notice me lightening up physicality-wise, because I know that the F is going to be dominant. I know the F is going to take care of itself, and I'm going to be really leaning into the other notes. So we have tonic, dominant. The dominant note is always more interesting than the tonic note, especially in this upper register, right? So fa, 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 and do, and then the la, that third, it's a first inversion major chord, la. That is the real, out of the 3 notes, that's the most interesting note. So I'm going to be really, and because it's lower note and it's pointing, the sound is going that way, I'm going to be leaning into that one especially a lot, physically. And hopefully, from a distance, it will balance out. So it won't be fa, do, la, fa, do, la. I want fa, do, la, and just one console of instruments. So instead of having 3 separate drums as part of my instrument, I just want one instrument that just happens to be 3 separate notes, if that makes sense. That's what we're going to try. So let's give it for the sticks, because of the tessitura of I'm going to use something even with a little bit more mass. And these are just a bigger verse. These are my sixes. So I've actually never played this, but because of the acoustics in this rehearsal hall, and just by myself, if I had to play Mozart, then Beethoven, then Brahms, and then Tchaikovsky, I would want to create a difference of sound quality between each composer.
Mm-hmm.
So typically, I would just use the same sticks that I would use in the Brahms. But because I'm only playing 4 things for you today, I want to make sure that every composer has a distinct sound quality. So I'm going to give a little bit more cushion, actually, to the Tchaikovsky, knowing in that upper register that I'm not going to suffer for the articulation. So if I use something that's too hard, especially in this upper register, with using the larger instruments, it can sometimes sound too brittle. And we don't want to get that sound, especially when you have the heavy brass, tuba and the trombone, full section with that. You're just playing right along with them. You just want to reinforce their sound, accompany their sound, and get that kind of galvanize the brass section.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some brass. No, it's kind of copper.
Yeah,
but
copper.
But my drums have brass too.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of the honorary or dishonorary member of the Chicago Symphony brass section.
Yeah.
But anything that I can do to complement what they're doing, making sure that I provide the right sonority to enhance what they're doing is going to be a big help, I think, for the orchestra in general. And so let's give it a try, see how it sounds with these mega 6 sticks. And again, these are just a very similar weight to your typical Berlin or German sticks. They're a little bit wider on the handle end, which I happen to like, and they're a little bit more top heavy, so they have a little bit more weight to the sound. Mm-hmm. And because of the tight wrap, there's no the pitter patter. We don't get, so there's less stick noise and more instrument noise. That's what we're trying
Pitch
for.
comes
I
through a
hope
little
for,
more
yeah.
clear.
I'm going to try to play the instruments more like bells and less like drums. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we're trying for. We'll see how it works.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Scott, I want to thank you again so much for having me here as a guest with the Seoul Philharmonic. It's great to see you again, and such a joy to play music with you.
Of course, yeah, it's an honor to have you in Seoul, and finally nice to play again after such a long time off during these odd times. So it's a pleasure.
PASIC 2020. We hope you enjoyed this clinic, how to practice without practicing, and also success through simplicity. We're focusing on the compositional language of each and every composer, trying to make the music alive, even on drums. We can make beautiful music together. Thank you so much. Anything else you want to say?
I think you got it. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching and joining us. We appreciate it.
Have a wonderful time. We will see you in person at PASIC 2021. Right?
Yeah. I hope.
I sure hope so. We did the best we could, and thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching it. Scott, you're amazing.
You too, David.
Awesome. Bye.